Hey fam, call me Maddy. It's not my real name, and I've asked a friend to make this post so I'm untraceable. I just need to share this story, so, I don't know, brace yourselves, okay? So let's go back to when I was just a 12-year-old girl. My dad decided to surprise me with a day at this circus I had wanted to see. The air was buzzing with laughter and chatter, and the intoxicating scent of cotton candy and popcorn hung heavy, mixing with the thrilling sounds of rides and games. The atmosphere was alive with excitement, with bright lights illuminating every corner. They had this clown show going on, and I begged my dad to take me. Among the colorful clowns, there was this one guy, Sneaky Peaky. From the get-go, his eyes were locked onto me, his gaze lingering, probing. It wasn't outright creepy, but unsettling, like shadows dancing in the corner of your eye. Sneaky Peaky was dressed in a polka-dotted onesie that clashed with chaotic, oversized shoes. His face, painted white with a sinister, ear-to-ear red grin and dark, penetrating eyes, exuded an unsettling presence. A wig of curly green hair crowned his head, and a bright red, oversized nose completed his creepy ensemble. After the show, he approached with that creepy focus in his eyes and said, "Hey kid, wanna see a trick?" He pulled out a coin and, with a flick of his wrist, made it vanish and reappear behind my ear. It wasn't anything grand, but the way he was looking at me made my skin crawl. Then he offered me a lollipop and asked, "Wanna play hide and seek?" His unsettling grin was still plastered on his face. Dad, sensing the vibe, was swift. "No thanks," he said, and we left the scene hastily. But Sneaky Peaky was relentless. He was literally lurking around every corner we turned. The sight of his grotesque smile hiding behind walls and curtains became a regular and unnerving occurrence. Dad finally had enough and confronted him, but Sneaky Peaky just stared past him, his gaze fixed directly on me. Dad reported him to security, and we left abruptly. That night, I couldn't shake off the bad vibes. I couldn't sleep. I still had that feeling of being watched. I was lying there in bed feeling uneasy, like something was just not right. The room was kind of dim, with just the soft glow from the streetlight sneaking through the curtains, playing tricks with the shadows. And suddenly, there he was. I glanced over at the window, and my heart skipped a beat. Sneaky Peaky, with that ghastly white makeup covering his face, was right there, staring in my window in the glow of the streetlight. He mouthed the words, "Found you," through the glass. His eyes were locked onto mine, and I froze for a moment, like my whole body forgot how to move or scream. But it only lasted a few seconds. As he reached to open the window, fear took over, and I let out a scream that probably woke up the whole neighborhood. My dad came rushing in, but by the time he got there, Sneaky Peaky was gone. It was like a nightmare, something you can't believe actually happened. This twisted game of hide and seek didn't stop. His appearances became an ongoing nightmare. I would see him at school, at the mall, even outside my friends' houses. The police finally decided to surveil our house, and one night, they spotted him approaching our backyard in the middle of the night, his grip firm on a sinister bag. They apprehended him swiftly. The bag had all kinds of horror stuff like duct tape, a taser, a long hunting knife, and chloroform with a rag. It was all real. My nightmare was real. I woke up to the commotion and looked out my bedroom window. His gaze immediately locked onto mine from the back of the cop car. It was the most terrifying place I had ever been. There was a strange sort of twisted satisfaction on his face, despite being in handcuffs. I thought the circus was a nightmare, but the trial was a real-life horror show. I learned his name was actually Sneaky Peaky. He had it legally changed. He was this eerie specter in the courtroom, tall and lanky, his skin pale and his eyes sunken, shadowed by dark circles that made him look more like a ghoul than a man. He looked almost as creepy even without the clown outfit. Testifying was like living the nightmare all over again, only this time his chilling gaze was unrelenting. He seemed to pierce right through me, never blinking or looking away. His stare was a constant reminder of the torment he planned for me. It felt like I was his prey, and he was relishing every moment of my suffering. He faced charges of attempted kidnapping and attempted murder, and the court echoed with the whispers of his macabre intentions. He unabashedly admitted his twisted plans, his desire to abduct me and to end my life in the most horrifying way imaginable. It seemed like he wanted me to hear it and know exactly what he had in store for me. His dark, haunting eyes never left mine, turning the courtroom into a living nightmare. I tried to push forward, to bury the painful memories as he got sentenced to 10 long years behind bars. The world started to regain its colors, the shadows retreated, and I moved to a new city, hoping to leave the past behind. College was a fresh start, a place where I met my boyfriend, and we started building a life together, away from the haunting memories of Sneaky Peaky. Yet, just as the fear began to fade into the background, a call brought it all crashing back. It was Detective Raleigh who had handled Sneaky's case. He informed me of Sneaky's impending release, and every ounce of security I had built around me shattered into a million pieces. Raleigh tried to reassure me, mentioning Sneaky would be on parole and under close supervision, and I should be fine. His words were supposed to bring comfort, but they felt like hollow promises. The memories, the fears, they all came rushing back, making me question how this could be possible. Could he still be obsessed with me after all this time? I became a shell of my former self. I was constantly on edge, and the world around me became a haunted house with Sneaky Peaky lurking around every corner. I stopped leaving the apartment, not even for classes or the gym. Fast forward a few weeks. My boyfriend and I were curled up on the couch watching a movie. We tried to find comfort in each other's company. But deep down, I knew that the looming threat of Sneaky Peaky was growing with each day he remained at large. As we watched, my phone rang, jolting me from the momentary distraction. I glanced at the caller ID and my heart sank. It was Detective Raleigh again. Dread washed over me as I answered, my voice trembling. "Hello?" Raleigh's voice was solemn, confirming my worst fears. Sneaky Peaky had absconded, violating his parole conditions, and he hadn't been seen in 2 weeks. The police had issued a warrant for his arrest. To make it worse, he said they had found photos of me when they searched his place. Lots and lots of photos. My hand trembled as I held the phone closer. I didn't need to ask if there was any reason to be scared. The fear was already growing inside me. This was bad. "We're taking this seriously, Maddy," Raleigh said. "Officers are actively searching for him. In the meantime, a plainclothes officer will keep an eye on your apartment just in case." Despite his words, I couldn't find any relief. Sneaky Peaky's obsession with me was unrelenting. I thanked the detective and ended the call. I felt sick to my stomach. Days passed, each one adding to the mounting anxiety. And then came the unthinkable. My boyfriend, the one person who made me feel safe during all this, was struck by a hit-and-run driver. He had been crossing the street on his way home from work. The car came out of nowhere, striking him with a sickening thud before speeding away, callously leaving him injured on the side of the road. He lay in the hospital with severe injuries, but he miraculously survived. The description he provided of the driver sent shivers down my spine. It sounded all too much like Sneaky Peaky. The eyes, he said, had locked onto him. Deep, dark eyes, penetrating. It was clear to me that he wanted my boyfriend out of the way so he would have an easier time getting to me. In the middle of all this chaos, I found myself facing an agonizing decision. Stay by my boyfriend's side, knowing that Sneaky Peaky was closing in, or escape to the safety of my dad's place back home. It was a choice that weighed heavily on my heart, and was one of the toughest I had ever made. Eventually, I decided that leaving would be the safer option for both of us. Sneaky Peaky's relentless pursuit meant danger not only for me, but for anyone close to me. I decided I would drive to my dad's place the next morning. I spent the day preparing, packing essentials, and going over the route in my head. I knew I needed to see my boyfriend and explain my decision to him. When I arrived at the hospital that night, the look in his eyes told me that he understood. We held each other, tears streaming down our faces, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult. I headed home to spend one last night in the apartment by myself. I was terrified of the idea, but the fact that the police were watching my place made me feel a bit better. As I entered my apartment, it felt strangely dark, eerily different from how I had left it. I could have sworn I had left all the lights on. With a sense of unease gnawing at me, I quickly flicked on the hallway light and opened the closet door to hang my jacket. And there he was, in the closet, like something straight out of a horror movie. Sneaky Peaky's face had super thick white makeup all over, like seriously caked on. His lips were painted this bright, scary red, stretched into this big, twisted grin that just looked wrong. And that clown nose, it was like a freaky cherry on top, all shiny and red. His eyes, though, were the worst part. He had these dark, intense eyes, like they could see right through you. They were outlined with heavy black eyeliner, making them look even more piercing. It felt like he was staring into your soul, and not in a good way. He was wearing a green wig and polka dot onesie with these huge, oversized shoes. They made this weird clomping noise as he moved towards me. I swear I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced back to that awful night when I was just a kid, the night I saw him at my window. It was like time stood still, and my whole body tensed up. I couldn't move, not even an inch. Sneaky Peaky yelled, "Found you, Maddy!" His voice was insane, like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but I was stuck, frozen in place. Before I could react, he lunged at me, his skinny fingers gripping my arms. Panic surged as he clamped a damp rag over my mouth. I fought back with everything I had left, but I could feel my vision going dark fast. As everything faded to black, Sneaky pulled me close, breathing heavily. He ran his fingers through my hair, inhaling deeply and muttering those creepy words. "Found you, Maddy. Found you." I could feel his hot breath on my neck as he rocked back and forth, cradling my semi-conscious body. I remember trying to scream, but no noise came out of my mouth. I woke up with a pounding headache, disoriented, and in complete darkness. It took me a moment to realize I was in the trunk of a car. Panic surged through me as I realized my arms and legs were tightly duct-taped, and there was another piece of tape over my mouth, making it nearly impossible to make a sound. The car was moving fast, and the vibrations and hum of the engine were making me feel queasy. It seemed like we were on a highway. My mind raced, and 1,000 terrifying thoughts raced through my head. I made a silent promise to myself. I wasn't going down without a fight. I couldn't let him see me as scared or defeated. I had to find a way to break free and get out of this nightmare alive. Just as I was mentally preparing myself for the worst, I heard the distant wailing of sirens, and through the cracks in the trunk, I could see flashes of red and blue lights. My heart raced even faster, and hope flickered in the darkness of my fear. The car began to slow down, pulling over to the side of the road. This was it, a critical moment. I had to stay alert and be ready for anything. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, and I braced myself for whatever was about to happen next. I heard an officer shout for the driver to turn off the vehicle and drop the keys outside the car. Thank God it wasn't a simple traffic stop. I could hear the voice of the officer close, so I began kicking on the roof of the trunk. I managed to peel the duct tape enough to unleash a piercing scream. It was a moment of triumph, but it was short-lived. The cop yelled, "Show me your hands!" with much more urgency, but instead the driver hit the gas, peeling off with a squeal of tires on the pavement. The car careened off the highway, and the smooth ride turned into a turbulent journey on a bumpy road. The sirens grew more distant, and I felt utterly disoriented inside the dark trunk. After a few more minutes, the car pulled over, and Sneaky Peaky hastily ripped open the trunk. "Bad girl, Maddy," he said with that same twisted grin on his face. He wagged his finger back and forth at me. We were in the woods now, and I could hear a river raging nearby. Sneaky Peaky grabbed me, heaving me over his shoulder with surprising strength, and he began marching into the woods. But just as the wail of sirens filled the air, a police car skidded to a stop about 10 meters away from us. The officer jumped out, gun drawn, and yelled for Sneaky to freeze. This was my moment. I had promised to fight, and it was now or never. I opened my mouth, and with the ferocity of an angry pit bull, I sunk my teeth into Sneaky's back. I could feel my teeth sinking into his flesh, and a disgusting gush of warm blood filled my mouth. Sneaky squealed and dropped me to the ground with a thud. He regarded me for a moment with a look of surprise and amusement on his face. He reached towards me, and just then a gunshot rang out. I saw Sneaky stumble back and fall into a small ditch. He got to his feet and made one last moment of eye contact with me. He seemed to consider his options, and then he said, "My turn to hide." He winked and honked his grotesque, oversized clown nose, and with that, he disappeared into the darkness. The cop rushed to my side, and I begged him to pursue Sneaky, but he said protocol was to wait for reinforcements. "Besides," he said, "I shot him clean in the leg and he wouldn't get far." But of course, they did not find Sneaky Peaky. To this day, he remains at large, as Detective Raleigh put it. They found his giant clown shoes at the edge of the river. Raleigh assured me that even the strongest swimmer could not survive that current. But until I see a body, I am going to assume he is alive. This all happened about a year ago. Personally, I'm sure he's still out there, obsessing over me, waiting for another chance to strike. I have developed a pretty bad case of coulrophobia, which is an intense and irrational fear of clowns, often leading to anxiety or panic attacks when confronted with clown-related situations or imagery. Although in this case, my shrink says there's nothing irrational about it. I have nightmares about the guy on a regular basis, and this is why I don't have Instagram anymore. I have relocated to a new country, hopefully far away from Sneaky Peaky. I just had to share my story, so make of it what you will. But if you will take one piece of advice from me, let it be this. Don't trust clowns. If you see a clown, turn away. Do not engage with them. And under no circumstances should you ever go to the circus. At least not until Sneaky Peaky is dead or behind bars. I honestly believe there is something twisted in a person who wants to be a clown, dressing up like some sort of freak show. It's literally disgusting. Whenever I see them, even on TV, it brings on a panic attack. Anyway, fam, sleep tight. If you see anything sus that makes you think of Sneaky Peaky, post it below, and I'll make sure Detective Raleigh gets the info.